Hello and welcome to Marseille. This is another Gadsby's England video podcast. That's right, we got so addicted to these things we're doing it again, but this time it's much better because sitting next to me is a real star of football journalism. The great Phil McNulty, chief football writer for the BBC and BBC website. And we're delighted to have him with us. And normally we have this tradition with Phil that we do a little preview before a major tournament. And it's going to be no different this time, except you get to see us in all our splendour.
Sadly, this time you can see my face.
You get to see him in all his splendour anyway. I don't know about me. But we start off, unfortunately, on a bit of a sour note because I'm sure many of you have heard it got a bit rough here in Marseille, to understate it slightly. Phil, I mean, you've been staying in the centre of town and you've obviously been hearing sirens all night. I mean, what do you think it is about Marseille that just brings out the worst in the England fans?
Well, I think it's the combination. I don't think it was just the England fans. I think there was a combination of factors. I think it's a port city, the weather was hot and maybe people overindulged or whatever, but I didn't see too much of it, so I wouldn't like to pin blame on anybody, England fans or anybody else. Obviously, I've seen the video footage, which didn't look great, but hopefully today we can concentrate on the football. I was down at the port this morning, nice and quiet at that time, so hopefully it will continue like that throughout the day.
Yeah, I mean, let's hope so. I mean, probably the less said about it, the better, because it gives it sort of undue attention. I think moving on from it is probably the best thing to do. Right, which we shall do now. Here we go again, Phil. I mean, what can we... Well, I always think about what can we say differently than we can't say. Young team, England have,
yeah.
Exciting. I guess I've thought about this today. What the first thing to ask you would be, we like him very much. He's a very nice character, the manager, but could he be the Achilles heel in this team?
Well, I think it's up to Roy to show that he is not the cautious man that people like myself portray him as. He's not a conservative coach. And I think he has a group of players now that can help him do that. We've got young players coming through. That's Dele Alli. Even Raheem Sterling's been talked about as coming back into the team. Harry Kane has come through, an outstanding player who I think is going to be a top international. So I think there's the possibility with the squad at his disposal to prove one or two of us wrong who felt that Roy's first option is always conservatism. But again, we'll see when he picks his team later, when we see how they set up. But there is an opportunity for him to show that he's not a cautious coach, be a bit more exciting. And certainly the way he's been talking, that looks like the way he's going to go. But talking about it and doing it are two different things. Interesting to see whether someone of Roy's age, who's 68, can relate to these young players, get them to play. If he can do that, then I think we can at least enter the tournament with optimism, if not banging the drum that England are going to win it.
Well, that's a bigger drum than we've banged before, I think.
The drum we've banged before was the one sending them home from Brazil after the group stages.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, actually, that the age gap between the manager and the players is something that people haven't really picked up on, and that you would hope that he can kind of get into that mindset of the youth of the side. I mean, it is an exciting side. I mean, to watch people like Harry Kane and the sort of the way that Vardy has emerged, from non-league football is just miraculous, isn't it? They're actually planning to do a screenplay in LA. Apparently, a producer got on the phone, heard about this Vardy guy, yeah. And they really are trying to do it. And I haven't been asked, which is just I might have to keep doing this.
You need to push yourself forward. I mean, interestingly enough, we just had a little criticism of Roy Hodgson, if you like, but one of the things where he does deserve credit was 12 months ago he picked Vardy on the back of not a brilliant season for Leicester City, but he spotted something in him, picked him, and he clearly felt there was something there that he could develop at international level. This season he scored 24, 25 goals, helped Leicester City win the title, but I think Roy Hodgson does deserve a bit of credit for picking him out as somebody with international potential. He's not young, he's 29, but he's new to the international stage. And I think it was, I'm right in saying that England, when the squads were picked, had the youngest squad in the tournament. But then Germany replaced one of their players with a 20-year-old, so that pushed them to the youngest ones. We'll see. As I say, with England, and you've seen as many of these things as me, you've got to reserve judgment until they start playing. I know that sounds a silly thing to say, but in England, we always build them up. This is the one where we can do it, the 50 years of hurt type of thing. But really, you can only make more of a judgment on England after we've seen them playing against Russia today. People think this will be a bit of a stroll for them, but you can't underestimate the Russians. We don't know too much about them. they've been selling themselves short, saying, well, we've lost a few players to injury. Let's just see. We've heard all that before as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to naturally make themselves seem underdogs. I mean, I also know very little about them. Obviously, they fired Capello, and I've heard since then, I mean, which was a kind of a disaster, wasn't it, to appoint him. Ever since then, they've kind of become a bit more settled. So we know that they've got very, very old centre-backs with a combined age of 70 between them. But apart from that, I mean, I'm not too sure. Are there any other players that sort of stand out for you that might be dangerous?
Well, we were talking to a Russian journalist this morning at breakfast, and he was saying quite interestingly, it's not so much the players, he said, but since Capello has gone, Slutsky, the coach, has really settled things down in terms of the team. They've lost one or two of their better players like Zhagayev, but of course they've got still a very vast experience, as you've said. But I think the main impact they've had to improve them, which could pose a danger to England, is the new coach Slutsky, who's very experienced, and apparently, as you say, Capello left with a flea in his ear from the Russians, didn't do the job at all, but now they're a little bit more settled. And it was interesting at the press conference last night, they were using the old tactic of trying to wind Rooney up, even the media in fact, by trying to suggest that Rooney was past his best. We think you're a spent force, if you like. Rooney said, I'm not here to answer you or to defend myself, but there was a little bit of a feeling that they've settled down a bit post-Capello, so they will pose a threat to England. And of course, England also have to cope with the pressure of starting the Euros. They've never won an opening game in the Euros, which they will need to put right tonight because they don't want to be under any pressure going into the second game against Wales. Absolutely
true. I mean, it's always England's faltering start that you worry about, isn't it? In tournaments in general, I mean, it's just they go out there a bit ball shy, don't they? And that's a problem. I mean, but surely that means that Hodgson needs to make a statement. I mean, let's face it, we're not playing one of the superpowers, so you would hope that he will go out there with an attacking side, thinking, you know what, we are better player for player than this team, so let's go out there and take it to them rather than standing off them. I just think it sends out a very, very, not only a bad message but a dangerous message to other teams if we do that.
I also think one of the things that England cannot rely on at the moment is the defence. I think going forward England are very strong, they've got lots of options. People like Rashford and Sturridge and perhaps even Vardy, we don't think will start today, he might be on the bench. There are three players there in Vardy, Sturridge, Rashford, who have got outstanding potential. At the back, things are a little bit more unstable. He only picked three central defenders, Cahill, Stones and Smalling. Dyer is his holding midfield player, but he's also his full-back option in defence. I think England have to play to their strengths. They have to look to attack, and there's no better way to do that against perhaps this slightly ageing Russian team. But again, having been to lots and lots of these tournaments, at the back of my mind all the time is that sometimes England come into them full of confidence, and yet when the pressure's on, they make that little bit of a stuttering start. When England were in Brazil, if you remember, they lost the first game to Italy, but actually played very, very well.
Yes.
But the fact that they lost that game then put them under pressure for the second one against Uruguay, which they then lost, and of course everyone focused on that. But when England lost to Italy, they actually played really well. But bad start, under pressure right away, and of course Wales seem to be talking up that second game as the big one. So that places even more emphasis on today. They just cannot lose this game, and really, in fact, I don't think they can even afford to draw it.
Really, they can't afford to draw it. I mean, what the worst case scenario would be if Wales beat Slovakia and we don't get something out of this game, and then you're really facing trouble. Then, aren't you? You're facing probably a really sort of on top of the world Wales team, with us, trailing behind them, and that's what worries me.
You don't want to be on the back foot right away. I think that's the main thing. And I think the way England are talking, they realise that. They realise they've got to make a good start, fast start. Russia are a team that is beatable. It's not the hardest one they could face, as you say. But as I say, they cannot be on the back foot right away because they've paid the price for that in the past.
Yeah, I mean, but having said that, I mean, to not qualify, I mean, obviously we should win the group. I mean, let's make no bones about it. But to not qualify from to the second round at the Euros is actually it's more difficult not to qualify than it is to qualify. So goodness me, if we can't get out of this group, then we might as well just not bother anymore.
I don't think England will have any problem getting out of the group personally. I'm there to be proved wrong. I think England will get out of the group. I think if they don't get out of the group, then there's big trouble ahead for Roy Hodgson and his backroom team, and probably people at the FA as well. But I don't think that will happen. I think England will get out of the group. Then it's just a question of how far they can go on. I think if England reach the quarter-finals, I think Hodgson will probably get a new contract to take him through to the next World Cup. Anything less than that, I think there will be serious questions. But the starting point is the group, and I think England will get out of that.
Yeah, and I think also it's the way England play. And if England go out with in a kind of a glorious failure, that is a much better scenario for Roy Hodgson, isn't it? It's what they don't want is to play in a way the way they did in the last Euros, which was just dull, wasn't it?
I think also